Okay, so Tess, let me get you to introduce your presentation and explain to us what's going to happen, and then off you go.
Okay, thanks very much everybody for coming. See you. So I'm going to do a sort of presentation, and then part of the way through, then I've slipped in Dorothea's, so she'll do a bit, and then there'll be a little bit at the end, which I'll come back in. But so it's sort of we join together two presentations, so we've got to make sure we get through them. Trying to make them not too big, too long. So yeah, really nice to talk to you all. Yeah, we were just saying earlier, I met Dorothea at on the Hoe in Plymouth when there was it was actually an allotment sort of celebration day where they had loads and loads of stuff happening on the Hoe. The council had organised it and had funding for doing things like that. So that was a long time ago now, must be at least 20 years.
Yeah, must be. Yeah. Must be.
So yeah, so it's been quite a while. And at that time I was actually working on allotment up in at Swarthmore, where Dorothea is now, on a permaculture allotment there. But my work isn't just on allotments. I'm sort of an edible landscape designer and a permaculture teacher, and I do it anywhere. In back gardens, on the street, orchards, sort of always looking for interesting, unusual places to do things. And the picture here is when I first started doing community engagement with gardening in 2000, a project called Dig for Devonport. And that was the sort of start of my sort of work in Plymouth, get paid work. I actually got paid work doing gardening and encouraging other people to get involved, and that sort of thing. Right, hang on. Okay. So basically, permaculture, for me, it's fun. It's finding fun ways of sharing, learning, and creating connections, and creating beneficial connections in particular. And the picture you can see, you may be able to see, there's actually pink string linking all the people in this picture. And that's one of the games we always do when we do teach permaculture, because it's around how things are connected. And we usually start by doing it with connecting with nature. So we'll do a woodland and how all the creatures are connected. But actually you can also do it for your community, and you could do it with your allotment, how people are connected on your allotment, the strengths and things that you get from the connection. So beneficial connections is really key, and having fun and celebrating is another thing that's really key in permaculture. So this is a picture of last year doing a permaculture course in Plymouth at Snapdragons, which is a community project. Right, go to the next slide. Oh, I've gone the wrong way. So for those who don't know, because I don't know how much people know about permaculture, permaculture comes from the words permanent agriculture, but then people discovered that you could use it for other things, like our society and our culture. So it's also permanent culture. So it's a bringing together of these elements. And one of my favorite quotes on permaculture is, "It's revolution dressed up as gardening." That's an amazing chap I met up in Bristol on an allotment who used to say that. I can't remember his name, but he looked like Tintin in the Tintin cartoons, the professor with the crazy hair. Except that professor's got white hair and this chap had black hair. So I always think of him. Revolution dressed up as gardening. But the founders of it was in the...
Can I just interrupt you? I'm really sorry. I don't know how close you are to your mic, but it's very, very echoey. Can you try going back just a tiny bit?
Oh, okay.
See if it makes any difference.
How's that? Is that better?
It is for me. We'll see.
Yeah.
Keep going and we'll see what you think.
Yeah, it sounds okay with me, actually.
Good.
Okay, brilliant. Oh, hi, Delphine.
Hi, I was at the XR meeting, but I've come here to see the rest of you. Good support. I just want to talk green things and nice gardening. So bring it on.
Can
Cheers.
you now mute, please?
Yeah.
That would be
Okay.
lovely.
Brilliant. So yes, it started in Australia in the mid-70s, and it was Bill Mollison and David Holmgren who actually started permaculture. Sorry, I keep getting it wrong. So I want to do something about how it actually can be useful for you on your own allotments, rather than just talk about permaculture. And I think for me, the key thing, it's about thinking in different ways. It's about seeing with new eyes and getting out of our rut. You know, you get your own way of doing things, and you keep going down the same sort of pathway. With permaculture, you've got techniques and tools which makes you stop and look from different directions and see things in a holistic way. And to me, that's the key thing. It really helps us stop and observe, and not just keep doing stuff. And there's something about thoughtful observation is much better than thoughtless labour. So that's what we're trying to do is help ourselves stop and look and observe and find the best solution. And then we've got the ethics and the principles, which are these tools, some of the tools which help us look at. And each of them looks at a slightly different way and makes you sort of think of things differently. And so that sort to me is really useful, to actually sort of have that thoughtfulness and time and observation and reflection before you do anything. It's about reading the landscape. Like recently it's been really, really wet, and I've been very busy, but I want to get out in that rain and go and look and see how the water flows through the rain when it's really heavy, how it works in the landscape if I'm doing a design. Because it's no point going a sunny day. And seeing where it's going and how the landscape moves, and the water moves through the landscape. It's also about using time and space better. A lot of people they'll do loads on their allotments in the summer, and then come October they just don't do anything. Whereas in permaculture, you're trying to look, what can we do all year round? How can we extend our harvests? How can we use different crops, and what can we eat in the middle of the winter? An example of eating in the middle of winter is I've just finished my kiwis, which I harvested in December, and they were perfect. Perfectly good to eat now. They ripened over December and January. I've just finished the last one. So it's that, how can you have food and things right through the year, not just in the midsummer. It's also about connections and allies. Who are your allies? And Dorothy will be talking about that very much when she's talking about how she's created this amazing group of people who are supporting each other in the way what she's been doing in the allotments there. So I won't say much about that. Celebration is always good, and food celebration goes together really nicely. And another thing we're really renowned for is in permaculture is trying to include unusual fruits and vegetables, particularly perennials and self-seeders, to make things easier. So I think that sort of gives you sort of a bit of a picture of how permaculture can help, and it is that sort of mindset really. And the diagram there is the ethics of permaculture: the earth care, people care, and fair share. If we get all those three working properly, then what we're doing is going to work really well. There's another diagram showing the earth care, people care, fair share. We've got loads of diagrams, really inspirational documents, diagrams, photos, videos everywhere. If you look on the internet, you can get really lots of information. And circling around are the principles which can help you look at things. And if you use each of these principles, almost like a pair of glasses, right? I've got my observe and interact glasses on today, or you know, and I'm going to go and look at with this way of looking. So that's really helpful, I find, and that's quite a charming sort of design. Here's another picture I find really useful when I'm trying to explain the difference between the conventional way of looking things and the permaculture way. And you might have to move if with the diagrams it's in the way, you can actually, if you go to the top of where the pictures of all of us are and click on it, you can move it so you can see what's written behind. So in a conventional way of looking at things with permaculture, you have an excellent location, never in shade. You have a good location with some shade, and you have a poor location with shade most of the time. Whereas with permaculture, you look at it completely differently. And you know, for example, where it's shady, that's really good for having certain things. In the middle of summer, you actually want the shadier places to put your lettuces, for example, because if you have them in the hot side of part of the garden, they'll bolt. So it's always how can we look at things in a different way and find out what they're useful for. And it's amazing what you can grow in the shadier areas. You know, it's that shady area, that's probably the best place to have your water butt so it doesn't get too hot. And little things like that is looking for the positive instead of just saying, oh, we only want the sunny bit, we don't want the shady bit. And with the climate change, we actually probably need more shade anyway. And with orchards, I think we're going to have to plant orchards on north-facing slopes rather than south-facing slopes in the future, so they get more cold in the winter because they need a certain amount of cold before they'll fruit well. So again, it's we can look at things in a way that what appears to be a negative can be a positive. So one of our principles we have, well, one of our sayings we have is, the problem is the solution. One of my favorite ones. Okay. So this diagram here, this page, you'll probably recognize. This is a typical allotment I've noticed over the years, where you have the grass at the side, with the grass path, and then the allotment is down, and then it goes up. So the allotment is lower than the paths. With permaculture, we're trying to change that and build up. So the paths will end up being lower than the allotment. And that's the reason it is lower, is because people have been extracting. They've been taking the weeds out with lots of soil and putting them in a pile somewhere. And they keep taking more and more soil out every time they're weeding. Whereas with permaculture, we're building the soil, we're mulching, we're adding, we're building up, and it's a completely different way of growing. So to me, that's key to see an allotment, whether it's a permaculture allotment or whether it's a allotment that's been dug for forever. Because I mean, it used to be that every year you would dig, the double digging. But that's what was thought to be the best way, and it's digging can be useful in certain sections. You've got your allotment and you don't know what's underneath there. But by adding, you need to dig less, and that's really beneficial all around. So permaculture is about earth repair, but it's also about understanding ourselves and how we fit into everything. And permaculture gives us a way of looking at what we do, and how we react, what our patterns are, how we can make things work better for us. So when I've had people doing permaculture designs with allotments, we've actually talked about the pattern of going from the house to the allotment, or how the allotment can be almost like an extra room of the house, somewhere where they go for a quiet time and things like that. So it's looking at things slightly differently, and how to make things easier and how things work in patterns and that sort of thing. And a lot of people say to me, "Oh, because people who've never grown anything, they say, "Oh, I kill every plant I grow. I can't grow anything. I kill everything." And I say, "Well, I've actually killed far more plants than you have, and it's not your fault. I can show you what the reason is that they've probably died." And I think it's that thing about encouraging people that we need to experiment. We need to, and experimenting is part of the observation and part of the learning, and that we can do that and we can share that, and it sort of works really well like that. Right, go to the next one. This is another tool which, if like Dorothea, you're working in a community on an allotment, this is one particular tool which is really worth looking at. We can't look at it in big detail, but this is a useful design web that's used, again, for helping us to work as a community. You can also use it as a design on yourself, but as a community, it's really useful. How do you keep things going? How do you what needs doing when, where are your allies, what are the limits, the blockages, and all that helps you to come up with a design that works really well. So this is one of my favorite tools in permaculture, the design web. But I can't go into detail, otherwise there won't be any space for Dorothea to say anything. This is quickly just showing you, this is when we're doing permaculture, it is about designing. It's not just about chucking things in. Oh, I've got something, quick, let's shove it in that corner. And then, oh dear, it really shouldn't have gone there, should it? It's far too big for that corner. So with design and taking that time to identify what's needed, to investigate, to evaluate, then to look at different options, coming up with a design, then going away, coming back and having another look, and just doing it in a cycle and keep going around each year, a bit like when you do your planning for your allotments and where you put things. If you do it each year, you can learn on it, and it can help you sort of really sort of find a really clear way of going forward, so you know what you're doing and what you need to do and where you do it. So these diagrams, if you want copies of them, I can send them so you can look at them in more detail, because I realise I am sort of moving through fairly quickly. Right. So permaculture design is not a random collection of good ideas, it's a process. It starts with the receptive stage of observing and listening and goes through the creative stage of making design decisions and leads on to the implementation on the ground, and to reflection onto whether the odd tweak here or there might be appropriate. And then you start going. And this picture here is actually not an allotment, it's actually a very well rotted horse manure pile that I ended up planting all my squashes on, and then I ended up deciding to do the Three Sisters. And one of our principles is the right location. And this has always been the most productive area of my garden for squashes, because it just loves it. So here we've got squash, we've got corn and the beans, which is the Three Sisters, and then I usually add sunflowers for a bit of colour. So it's Four Sisters. But it's a nice way to grow food together. Although it's easier if you don't have beans that you have to take every day or every few days, that you store for using as beans rather than the green beans is easier. That's the Three Sisters, and very productive. And talking of being productive, evaluation is always really useful in permaculture. My garden is called the Resourceful Permaculture Garden. If you haven't heard of Good to Grow and their harvestometer, this is an amazing way to see how much you grow in a year. And I don't register everything, but last year you can see I registered that I'd harvested 424 kilos of fruit and veg. Apparently, I saved £3,170. Seems rather a lot. But also, it tells. Sorry, it tells you how much carbon you save as well. So apparently, I saved 171 kilos of CO2. If you want to know about that, I can send you information about that. It's I think it's fantastic to be able to have that as a resource, and you can compare each year. So I think it'd be great for allotments to be doing that as well. So do have a look at that. Right here, I think I forgot to finish this slide by the looks of it. I was speaking earlier about time and seasons and succession. I made a right mess of this slide. I apologize. The big picture is actually of us picking the kiwis I was talking about earlier. And this is from Plymouth, the garden centre up on Crown Hill. These are kiwis that grow on the edge of on the big old wall that they've got there, the fortified wall. And they don't pick them, and they told me they were ornamental and not edible. But anyway, we pick them and we eat them. We've done that for 2 years running so far. The other picture was about succession, because there's a thing, if you don't garden, if you don't cut the lawn, if you don't do anything, you basically get to forest. But anyway, apologies for that slide. That's the worst slide I've ever done. Right, I'm nearly there, Dorothea. You'll be able to speak in a minute. So permaculture basically helps us find resources and unusual food to help us become more resilient. And also adding foraging to what you're growing and to experiment, all that helps you be really much more abundant than if you're just growing vegetables. And probably most of you are far better at growing vegetables than I am. And you know, I'm useless at growing carrots, but then I can grow unusual things like this fruit, which is a juneberry, which is also a sacrificial plant, because if you can grow, you can use it as sacrifice, because it comes out exactly the same time as raspberries and red currants and things like that, and the birds actually prefer these berries. We can eat them too, and they're called juneberries, but they come out in July, normally anyway. I think that's it. Okay, so that's me. I'll hand it over to Dorothea, and I will, while Dorothea is talking, I will be looking at the questions and working out the answers.
Hi there. Yeah, so as Tess mentioned earlier, we met each other probably about 20 years ago, and she changed my whole my whole attitude to growing. And it's so I blame everything on Tess. And I had trained in the traditional way, and I learned to garden at Pershore College in Gloucestershire. And when I met Tess, it was like, you know, it got me thinking, got the grey cells thinking. I'm starting this slide with me at my very first growing area, and this was on the permaculture plot in Swarthmore. And Tess introduced me to the permaculture plot. And if you can see that area of garden, that little area in front of me was about 2 meters by 2 meters, maybe 2.5 meters by 2 meters. And it was absolutely crammed with food. And there was no space for weeds. It was just solid with produce. And it was an amazing harvest. And I had the tallest sunflower. You can just see the base of it. And the head was the size of a dartboard. It was massive. And it really sort of showed me just how easy it was to grow food without going through all the sort of rigmarole that I'd done in my previous sort of training. And I mean, I had another little area that I grew, which was slightly behind that. And again, you know, just an abundance, absolute abundance. And that was just using wood chip and compost, no digging. It was an amazing experience, and loved it, absolutely loved it. Move it there. So I just, how do I move it? Oh, Tess, could you move it for me? Because I can't actually move it. Could you move the next one for me, Tess? Thanks. So, move on 20 years, and I now have my own plot at Permaculture, but I keep at Swarthmore, but I keep close connections with the Permaculture plot people on the plot, and we work together, we help each other, we celebrate together, because that's part of the whole permaculture thing, is that we become firm sort of allies. And I've started working with the association and with Swarthmore Committee. I joined the committee because I was running some courses or some workshops ad hoc and just to people who were interested. And I decided, someone asked me to join the committee. I decided, okay, I'll do it. Got to be in it to change it. So I did. And I implemented the permaculture principles, as you can see, and Tess showed you the circular image of the permaculture principles of observe and interact and so forth. You can read it. I won't go through it. I'll go through it in a minute, but not here. And so I implement these very sort of subtly. I plant the little seeds to the new members of the workshops, because these are people who have perhaps never gardened before, and they've never, or if they have, it's been very minimal, or maybe they've sort of gone at it and things aren't working. So I decided to create workshops, Grow with Nature workshops, and so in its name it sounds very, very innocent, but whilst at the workshop I plant little seeds into their heads, and these little seeds then lead them to these two big guns, Tess and Nick. And Nikki and Tess work together as well. We all work together. And Tess is your permaculture, the permaculture lady in Plymouth and around Cornwall as well. And Nikki is the compost guru. So between them, when I'm planting the seeds, these are the two people that come in and sort of just slowly do their thing, and it's almost seems like a sort of natural process. They come and do their talks for us, and by that time I've already implanted some seeds for thoughts in the workshops, and it seems like a natural process. It flows beautifully. Could you put the next one for me, Tess? So here we are. One of the design principles here is design from pattern to detail, and I implement this quite early in the process of the workshops, because I start to get them to notice things around, patterns around them, and we sort of, I get them to pick things out. I get them to look at different things around the allotment, and how nature grows and stuff like that. And then I get them to sort of start to think about designing or planning their gardens, their plots, and so really saying, look, this is going to save you money. It's going to save you time, because otherwise, if you don't sort of plan it, you just go gung ho in, and it might work out fine, but it might not as well. And you sort of, how can I say? So over the years, I've found that people have come in and they've done wonderful things. They've cleared their overgrown plots. They start digging and planting, and then they have a pretty good harvest the first year, but the second year it's overwhelming, because then the seeds come. They all start, they've been awakened, and they have to do it all again. It's about firefighting rather than enjoying it. So they spend the second year firefighting and going more, it's actually even harder work than the first year, it seems to them, and they feel overwhelmed, disappointed, disheartened. And it seems to be like a 1.5 to 2 year cycle where they suddenly just lose interest. The second harvest or second season to the third season, they lose heart, you know. And it's so sad to see that, because I love that wonderful enthusiasm that they start with. And so I sort of plant these little ideas and seeds, and we, you know, and get them interested without being overwhelming them with information. So it's sort of little by little, and we have little tasks that we do. And so one of them is to start to think about designing. Could you move that test for me, please? And during those projects, they start to form really good bonds with each other. They become very strong allies, and each group becomes much a very good friendship group and good allies. Why permaculture? Well, as Tess has explained, it's not just about growing food. It's the glue that really holds the community together, because you start to look at what you're doing in a completely different way. I mean, we're all very different people and different backgrounds, but because permaculture encourages diversity, we see things from different viewpoints, and we learn from each other. It's wonderful. But at the end of the day, we all have similar goals. We want to grow food. We want to get the best out of our plots. So permaculture also helps us with that. It helps us achieve those goals. But more than anything, we learn so much more about ourselves through this process. We learn, you know, we realize actually how capable we are as gardeners, as growers. Could you? Oh, here we have a picture of Tess, a permaculture talk. I brought Tess in. The big guns were brought in on that day. This is the first of the workshop groups. Could you put on to the next one, please? And here we have the my friends from the permaculture plot, and we celebrate. I think that was, how many years was that, Tess, of the celebration? I can't remember now. It was something like 25 years, was it? Something like that. I don't know. How many years had they been there? I can't remember. Anyway, it was a probably not that, maybe 15 years. It was a celebration anyway. They'd been there so many years before even I got there, and yeah, so we're still friends. We had a party, we celebrated, and we still, you know, we're still very closely connected. We assist each other in different things, and so it's always good to celebrate and keep those friendships going. Can you get onto the next one? Tess, could you slide on to the next slide, please?
Yeah, it is. And I think it was 20.
Was it 20? Yeah. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
so I couldn't unmute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that was a wonderful part. You know, we had a lovely celebration. And another of these principles is catch and store energy, produce no waste is another one, and obtain the yield. And of course, these are the sort of things that we are looking at the allotment. You know, catch and store energy. Well, energy, food is energy. If you think about food being energy, so we're storing energy, we're producing no waste, because when we have too much food, we share it with others, but then we've still got enough that we can store it. And obtain a yield is another principle. So we use those principles, and here we are, we're, you know, we're fermenting our food. So they're learning about fermentation. We're using our excess to store, and teaching them about how they can store their food. And it's an amazing process. At the same time, we're becoming, you know, strong bonds are being created, and people getting to know each other. And this is such a powerful thing. When I first went to the allotment, a few people would know each other, maybe because of time, they've been there a long time. But now I'm finding with newcomers, doing the workshops, running the workshops, that those friendships are happening much faster. And here we are on the sunny day fermenting at my plot. Can you pass it on? and creatively use and respond to change. I mean, we live in a world now where we have, I don't know if your allotments are prone to break-ins and people stealing stuff. So instead of trying to, someone said, oh, we should put CCTVs. Well, that's not going to stop them stealing it. And one of the things we respond to this change in the way the culture now is not so gentle. So we use creativity to think of ways to how do we prevent things being stolen. So one of the things one of the workshops was pimp your tools, and telling people to mark their tools so that they stand out, so that whoever had them, we knew who they were. You had your signature design on your wheelbarrow, on your handle of your tools. So so that was a way of responding to change, changing the way of the culture nowadays, and so being creative, and it really does help. People are starting to do that with all their tools now. So they can identify them if their tools are found somewhere else. Could you do the next one? Thank you. And design from pattern to detail is the one. Oh, go back. Can you go back, Tess, to the next? The previous
I
one?
have. Sorry, it jumped forward.
It takes ages. All right. Okay. This is the one, is it? Okay. Integrate rather than segregate, and use the edges and value the marginals. These are two principles that are permaculture principles. And here we have integrate rather than segregate. So here we are, again, together. We're working together. We're planting together, and we're planting the edges and the marginals with hedges, fruit hedges and nut hedges and things like that. So we're creating a border of hedgerows which have fruits and nuts. So not only is it beneficial to us, it's beneficial to wildlife at the allotment. We are giving back as well to the wildlife here. So these are two principles that you'll see in permaculture, and that's what we're doing. We're integrating rather than doing something on our own in our own plot. We're helping each other, because ultimately that helps the entire allotment site. And we're using the edges and the marginals, because the edges and the marginals are very specific areas that people tend to forget. And by using them, it benefits everybody. So we can use the fruit from there, and so can the birds, and so can the mammals, and nuts as well. And also, hedges is an amazing thing, because people think of walls and fences, but hedges filter cold air, and it takes that wind, that cold wind, and it filters it. So it keeps the lovely sort of climate around the plot on a very cold day. Can you go on to the next one, please? And here we've got design from pattern to detail. And I'm just going through these principles because that's what Tess with permaculture, taught me. And I'm going through them to see how we implemented them in a plot size situation. And we've got design from pattern to detail. And I plant my grapes underneath my apple trees. This is not my apple tree, but I didn't have a photo of mine, so I just put this on. Because in nature, grapes find their way up trees in the wild, and they'll grow up trees to find the sun, to get the sun, the warmth from the sun. And the trees make perfect arbors or frames for them, and if we, no matter what type of frame we use for our grapes, whether they're metal or wood, at some point we're going to have to repair them. But trees are an amazing thing for them. So at the allotment, I have small apple trees in my allotment, and I let the grapes grow up the apple trees, and it's just perfect. I can pick them easily, and it doesn't harm the apple trees. It just weaves its way into the branches, and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I showed you earlier about how nature doesn't like to be bare. We look at the archetypal allotment plots, the old-fashioned, where they had lots of bare earth, and nature doesn't like that. You know, nature wants to be covered up. And so if you look at the way the plants were covered up there, and also the primroses, the leaves underneath it, nature just naturally, you know, leaves dropping down, wood, everything like that. That's what it likes. That's how it likes it. And if the ground is bare, it will just put weeds there. It wants to cover it up. It's like, you know, me removing parts of my skin. I will have disease. I will have problems with my soil. It will wash off. My blood will wash away. The same thing with nature. And so we want to cover everything up because that's how nature wants it. And that's how we should really be looking at our allotments. We really shouldn't have bare soil. Can you go on to the next one? Tessa? And also creatively use and produce no waste. And I'm just showing you this because this is my allotment and the table. Everything there is given, borrowed, reused, repurposed, recycled, reimagined, reduced. Right? It's been repaired, it's been renovated, it's been restored, recirculate, restrained. I hold myself back. I try not to do too much. And that's the key thing, is restrain yourself at the allotment, because I see people get very excited about building lots of fences and all sorts of things. And really, we don't need all that. And that's one of the principles, is creatively use and produce no waste. And nature doesn't have any waste. So we try to just reuse everything and find and also share, because if you have something someone else needs, you know, share it. And could you just pop the next one? And this is the very first, and Tess said to me, can I put your observe and interacting slide at the beginning of your slideshow? I said, yeah, you can, but I'll probably put it back again. And there was a reason for that. It didn't matter either way, but why I wanted it at the end was, this is the site. This is Swarthmoor, and this is our two areas. We've got the lower plot at the bottom and the main plot at the top. And we learn so much from observing and interacting with the Swarthmoor sites. And when we do our workshops, we walk around, we look at stuff, and it helps us plan and design our plots, as well as sort of our communal areas. So we start to look at it not just individually, but as a whole. And one of the things I hope with the workshops is that we manage to do that we start to think of us being as part of something rather than just on our own, in our little plot, doing our own thing. And the reason why I wanted to put it at the end, because, you know, when you start something and you say, well, this is how you start. But by the time you got to the end of it, you've forgotten where you wanted to start. So, so the reason why I put it at the back, because it makes you then go back to the beginning. I get it. I start right there. And this is how I start to look at things. So I end with the beginning, because that's what nature is. It's a circular thing, and we just go round and round, observing and interacting.
Lovely. Dorothea, we've got a question. It would be useful to take now, I think.
Yeah.
Richard and Christine are asking, oh no, hang on, sorry, up one. Jane's asking, how do you prune your apple trees without damaging the vines?
Oh, well, you prune them at the same time. So,
okay.
So they need pruning, and it doesn't harm the vines. And I don't know if you know about how you prune the apple trees. You have like a sort of goblet shape, so you sort of prune them, you know, like a goblet. And really, the vines are just on the main strong branches. They don't harm them at all. And, you know, they're bare at the same time, and they fruit around the same time. So it's actually, I think the vine, depending on the summer, can sometimes be a bit earlier. But yeah, it's pretty easy, actually. Yeah, they've found the same. The season's about the same, and they also like, you know, to have a little bit of a cold snap as well at the same time.
Okay, lovely. Tessa, I don't know if you're about to take over again, but question from Richard and Christine asking, would you recommend no dig? And have you got anything to say about that? And I know you started with, don't keep taking the earth away by digging your weeds out with lots of earth on it. And we put down lots of mulch and things. So do you want to say something about no dig?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not never dig, but it's definitely reducing digging hugely, and much more like Dorothy was saying about covering the soil as much as possible. Because as soon as you dig, you're bringing seeds up to the top. If you mulch, the seeds stay dormant. So obviously, there are times when you need to dig if you're digging out the potatoes, unless you dig them doing it a different way. So it's minimizing, and it's certainly not doing the double digging they used to do. That's for certain. The only time I would say you did that is if you went on a new site. I know Dorothy was when they were doing one particular site, there was about 7 layers of carpets and goodness knows what underneath. So there is a time to do that. But basically, once you've done that and got out any of the glass and the rubbish and the stuff, then you set it up, and then you don't you dig minimally, very little. So you call it no dig, but it's not actually never dig.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, my granddad and my father were very keen gardeners, and that's how I got an interest in growing veg and things. And they were very much winter comes, you double dig. It's
Yeah,
an
yeah,
awful lot of persuasion to make me believe that isn't
yeah,
really the way to go.
yeah. Well, it was the way everybody did it. So
Yeah,
and I think the problem is the more you dig like that, it's a bit like if you look at the countryside when they plough now, you don't get as many birds and things following them because there's less worms. So every time you dig, you're bringing all those things. The
yeah,
things that are down in the soil underneath need to stay down. They don't want to be up the top because it's different. So it's the turning over is really difficult for creatures in the ground. So the no dig means that you've got much more mycorrhizals under um, the surface of the soil, and the mycorrhizals are the roots of the fungi, and they're like an extra root system that will go out and they'll go and bring nutrients back into your site. So it's the undisturbedness, as it were, is
yeah,
what's really beneficial to plants.
right. And here's another question addressed to you specifically. What did you think of that article from the Telegraph? Carbon footprint of homegrown food 5 times greater than those grown conventionally. I personally can hardly believe in that.
I haven't seen that one. I'll have to go and look.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's funny how there's always a story the opposite of what seems to make sense in the papers from time to time. I'll have a look at that one. Basically, every system can be improved using permaculture, and there's so many, which I'm sure you all know, so many good reasons to grow food in your own back garden, whatever people say, food inches rather than food miles and plastic and goodness knows else. I don't know how they've worked that out. So I'm going to have a look at that one. But thanks for
I'll just show
whoever
this.
it is. Tell me send me. I'm going to have to read now.
Okay, I'll just throw this in because it's quite amusing. I've just been reading the book Entangled Life and found myself apologising to the soil the other day for disturbing the roots. I love that. I love that. Have you got more slides to show us? Have I
I've got
interrupted?
a few more slides showing some events, but
Okay.
yeah, I think just to show some of the stuff that's happening at the moment. But yeah, I mean, there is that thing that some disruption of the soil, like badgers coming through and digging, or rabbits and things like that. There's always a little bit of disturbance. But
Yeah.
it's a monoculture type thing where it's big areas in particular. It's really not good.
Okay, well, we've got 35 minutes. How about we finish
Yeah.
the slides and then we come and have a roundup and see if there are more questions at the end.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me next slide. Oh, hang on. There was another slide of yours, Dorothea. We missed this one. It was at the end.
Oh yes, catch and store energy. Yes. Yes, I forgot. I must have missed that one. Yeah, catch and store energy. And basically, one of the things I wanted to say was when we start at our allotment, and people say, "Oh, the allotment officer says to us, don't worry about the shed yet, just get growing." Well, I actually don't agree with that, because what keeps us at our allotment is having somewhere to shelter. And so I always say, look, as soon as you can, get a shed, because you've got somewhere to keep the tools, you've got somewhere to shelter in the rain. Sometimes we have a rain, for about 10, 15 minutes, and it's heavy. But if we can shelter for those 10, 15 minutes, we can be back out there doing our stuff. Whereas if we had no cover, we'd be, getting our coat and back home again. And so I always say, look, get your shed up as soon as possible, because there's no point just leaving. And it's always nice to garden when it's rained as well. After it's rained, I always love that. Anyway, the smell is amazing. So I encourage people to get the shed on, and it also has another reason, because it's also a rain catcher, isn't it? The roof of your shed, you can store water. So as soon as you can get your shed up, get some water barrels in, start to store the water, store the energy. And there I've got a compost toilet that I was designing, and you can see a green wheelie bin in the back and a water catcher there. And the wheelie bin, because you keep all the deposits of your compost toilet and let it rot down for 9 months, and you can use it for under the trees and things like that. It's nature wastes nothing. We are here because of poo. We're here because of death. We're here because plants have been able to grow, as a result, trees and so forth, of death and poo, basically. And so that's why we're here, and we've evolved the way we have. And nature, as I said, wastes nothing. So don't waste these amazing resources that you can get. And last year we had a very hot spring. I'll just quickly run through this. And Tess and I did a how to save water during this sort of very hot period. And that's what this slide is about as well, because water is also a resource, as we said, and energy is everywhere, and you just have to know where to look for it. And so we've got like aquifers running under the allotment. And here, just an example of wool. I've used wool as a mulch here, and it meant that I didn't have to use so much water during that piping hot weather. I also used leaves of the plants, of big plants, to cover some areas that I've growing something a bit more tender to the sun. But it was amazing. It saved loads of water. So just that's it.
Lovely.
Waste
Lovely.
nothing.
Yeah.
Tess, just before you go, in the chat at the moment, if people are interested, Gus has kindly put in that Telegraph article, the link for it.
Brilliant.
I don't know, Marcus, whether we could actually also put that on the Facebook page.
Yeah, well, I actually read on our Facebook page, they published the scientific article about it.
All right.
And my comment on that was that it's like the worst scientific article I've ever read.
Oh, good. Okay.
It's highly disorganized, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So yeah, that's my thought on it. But
Okay. Well, if you want to look for yourself, there's a link.
Thank
there.
you.
Go
I
on.
appreciate that. Okay. Right. Yeah, I was just doing some posters. Lots of you are too far away, so I'm sure it's going to be not much help to you. But just it's interesting. We've been able to do lots of training in Plymouth, and we've been able to give away free training for people. In fact, I managed to get Dorothea a free place last year. We had loads of places last year. In Whitley, we got free introduction to permaculture courses at the moment for their local people, and this is the second one we've done this year, which is quite fun. So we're sort of really getting into communities and helping change them. And then in April, we start our 12-day course that goes on until June. And this is the one that Dorothea did last year, and Delphine did it a few years back. And there are loads and loads of permaculture courses. And if you look on the association's website, you'll find some near you, I'm sure. But we are really blessed, particularly in the Southwest, with some fantastic teachers. I teach with Claudia Van Gool, and she is brilliant. So that's just advertising and saying away. But we've been doing the training, the permaculture courses. We've been getting people from the council doing it. We're working with the council. We're actually changing the culture of the city. And an example of it is on the 2nd of March. We're just basically taking over Pool Farm, the city farm, which is owned by the council, to do an event all about seeds. And we've even got a seed sovereignty workshop with Robin, forgotten her surname, begins with M, who's the Southwest coordinator of the seed sovereignty thing from the Gaia Foundation. So she's coming along to talk, and yeah, we're infiltrating, and we're really affecting change, not just on growing, but on how things are, how trees are being planted across the city, how community stuff is happening, and yeah, it's quite fun. But it's that revolution thing. It's not just gardening. And oh yeah, and again, I know a lot of you are a long way away, but if you fancy having looks, another thing we're doing around composting, because I was saying it's our earth repair. So Dorothea, and you can see Marcus here, you can see Marcus talking about our amazing crowdfunder that we started yesterday. And yeah, it's really nerve-wracking doing it, but we need to get this money quickly to pay for some second-hand composting equipment, 3 ride-downs for food composting to set up in Plymouth as, again, another part of our permaculture, repairing the earth, making best use of the resources, and yeah, changing, getting compost that we like. There's a lot of compost that you buy that you look and you think, what on earth is that?
Yeah.
Reducing compost miles as well.
Yeah, reducing compost miles, exactly. And I think that's it for me. So I might come off the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, my logo. So I just say the logos. So a lot of my work is through Food Plymouth, which is a sustainable food place. As part of Sustainable Food Places, I think there's over 80 places across the country. So there will be one near you wherever you are. But again, we're working to change the food system, and so various projects like the generous earth composting and the growing resilience and some of the permaculture stuff is actually supported and enabled by Food Plymouth. So it's a good way of getting things happening by working with your local food, sustainable food places, if you're interested.